Welcome to Back to My Garden. Discover your passion for gardening. Here's Dave Ledoux.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world when you listen to this. I'm Dave Ledoux, and welcome to another episode of Back to My Garden. And we have a very unique and special guest for you today, folks. We're going to go across to the Midwest in Indiana. I've been wanting to interview an actual seed professional now for months. And Noah Herron is from Urban Farmer. Urban Farmer provides seeds, plants, and garden supplies for home gardeners and farmers. They have a large selection of non-GMO vegetable seeds, herbs, fruits, flowers, and farm seeds. I noticed on their web store they sell the world's hottest pepper, the Carolina Reaper. That's 1.5 million Scovilles. We're going to talk about novelty as well. Urban Farmer produces over 40 varieties of seeds each year on their farm in Westfield, Indiana. And they've been doing that now for 7 years. I want to welcome to the show Noah Herron. Hi, Noah. Welcome to Back to My Garden.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited that you're here. I got a ton of questions to ask you. Our listeners are going to want to hear your stories, and I want to get to know you a little better. Can you take a minute or two? Just share with us a little bit about your background and how did you get into gardening?
Okay. So I'm 31 right now, and when I grew up, my grandpa always had a huge garden, probably, half an acre or so, just a personal garden in his backyard. And, we would go over there all the time and help him with his garden, and I just kind of remember growing up in a garden. And so when I went off to college, I obviously didn't have the opportunity to have a garden moving around every year and just living in apartments and in a fraternity house. I went to IU Bloomington. So I was moving around, just didn't have time for a garden. And once I graduated, moved up to Indianapolis. And the very first year that we moved up to Indianapolis, I had the opportunity to have a garden. So I did some research, found some really good quality seed online, grew only about 10 different varieties, one type of tomato, one type of pepper, one type of cucumber, grew those, had really good yields, and I was kind of thinking, I was just starting off, I went to IU and had a biochemistry degree. I worked at Eli Lilly for a few years, and I just really wasn't liking it. I really kind of wanted to do something that just made me happy, that I really enjoyed doing, and gardening was definitely on the top of my list. So what I did was I'm an avid magazine reader. I read a lot of magazines, Sports Illustrated, a lot of gardening magazines, and I had these magazines piling up in my closet. And one day I was out in the garage, and I was like, oh, what can I do with all those magazines besides throw them in the trash? So what I did was I started cutting some of the magazines up, and I created just like a little packet. And I was like, what can I do with these? What can I do with this envelope? And I was like, I can put my seeds in there from what I harvested this year, since I had all heirloom open-pollinated seeds, and I only grew one variety of each without cross-pollination. I was like, I'll keep my seeds in here, and I started collecting my seeds that year, and I was like, man, I have more seeds than I'll need for the next 10 years. So I was like, I'll have some really good yields. I had really good flavored tomatoes. I was like, I'll just dry these out, and I'll start a little website online. And that was back in 2009 when I first put my seeds online, and I just found a little website that was kind of like a little store, and just kind of started putting my seeds online, did a little advertising, and sold out within the first month of all my seeds. I was like, man, there's a kind of a little business behind this, and I didn't have a lot of seeds. It wasn't going to pay the bills or anything, but it was just something I kind of like to do. So the first year, I just kept on growing it, thinking of what I can do the next year, and started getting a good following behind me the first couple of years of customers, and taking a lot of pictures of the fruits, and just kind of growing the business. And it got to a point that my garden wasn't big enough to be able to grow to satisfy all my customers. So I had to start talking to other gardeners, farmers, just with cross-pollination. You can grow open-pollinated tomatoes and And some sweet peppers can be pretty close to each other, but hot peppers have to be at least like 80 feet apart. So when you start wanting to grow cucumbers and pumpkins and watermelons, those cross-pollinate really easily, and they need to be at least like a mile apart, each variety. So I kind of started finding relationships outside of just my garden, trying to find different varieties, and kind of just kept on growing them. And now we offer about 150 different types of tomatoes, which we grow about 15 of those varieties, and the other ones are grown throughout the United States from different gardeners and growers that we have relationships with. So it's just kind of snowballed over the last few years, and now we have a 3,000 square foot warehouse where we have a lot of our seeds, just because 50-pound bean seeds take up a lot of room, and corn. So it's a lot more storage now, and we're doing really well online, and we just kind of keep on growing like that, and that's kind of how we started.
Fantastic. I just had this...
It's a long story, I know.
No, I just had this feeling like, oh man, there's no way we'll fit this into one podcast, but we'll do our best. I want the list.
We'll fit it in somehow.
Oh yeah, we'll just talk 3 times as fast.
Yep.
For those of you listening, I want you to go to Noah's website. It's www.ufseeds.com, and that's short for Urban Farmer, ufseeds.com. I'm going to put all of the links and resources that Noah shares up on the blog at BackToMyGarden. So in 2009, you became a .com entrepreneur.
Yeah, I guess you would call it that. Yeah, it was a learning process, and first website I ever made, and it definitely took a lot more time trying to figure out how to make things work online. But once you we've changed website developers 3 times. The first year we changed, and then the second year we changed to somebody else, and then the third year when I had enough money kind of built up from selling the seeds, everything, I've never taken out a loan. I've never not paid off my credit card bills the first of the month. So I wanted it to be more natural growth, organic growth, and so it took time to get where we wanted to. You can imagine just selling $2 seed packets with somebody buying 5-10 seed packets at a time and getting just a couple orders a day. So it's slow. But after a few years, we were able to get a really nice website built, which made it a lot easier on me. And it actually worked out better. A lot more people were able to find us on Google when you search non-GMO seed or heirloom seeds or tomato seeds. And it's one of those things that just takes time for your website to build up trust with Google and all the other websites like Yahoo and places that people search. So it's one of those things that it took a lot of time to get to where we are now, but now that we're in a really good spot now, and we're growing really fast, and we're actually looking to build a building here in the next this summertime. It's going to be hopefully 5,000 to 8,000 square feet. That should support us for the next 5-10 years or so.
It's a very hot conversation right now, this concept of heirloom seeds. And you mentioned the 80-foot rule to the 1 mile rule. Maybe you can, I was explaining to a friend what an F1 hybrid was. And he got that blank look on his face, like, wait, too much science.
Oh, man. Yeah.
There's a rule with heirloom seeds, right?
Yes, we have a store in Westfield, Indiana, and we have a lot of customers come in. And we get a lot of emails about this question, and it's probably one of the most highly misunderstood questions for gardening is heirloom versus open-pollinated versus F1 hybrid versus non-GMO versus GMO, and it's kind of a hodgepodge that people just don't really understand. And people think it's in gardening seed, or the GMO is in gardening seeds, but for the most part, it's not. But so let me start with heirlooms. Heirlooms are seeds that have been passed down for generations. There's no one definition out there that says what an heirloom actually is. Most people like to say if the seed's been around for at least 50 years and passed around and it's been open-pollinated, then it's an heirloom, like your Brandywine, like pink Brandywine is an heirloom. Rutgers tomato is an heirloom. And then you have your open-pollinated seeds, which have been created more recently, that are a stable variety of seed that you can grow next to other varieties. Sometimes you can grow next to other varieties, but your open-pollinated varieties are just more of a new type variety of seed that would turn into an heirloom as long as it stays, as long as it's passed down generation to generation, and then at a certain point you start calling it an heirloom. So there's not an heirloom can be open-pollinated, but an open-pollinated cannot be an heirloom yet. And then you have your F1 hybrids, which you kind of sometimes happen by mistake and are created. A lot of the breeders out there like to make the F1 hybrids. You take two open-pollinated varieties that should be grown far apart, and you pollinate them yourself, and then you create a new type of tomato. Say you take one variety of tomato and another variety of tomato, and you cross-pollinate them, then the fruits that created are an F1 hybrid. And then, sorry, I know this is probably why it's confusing, because I don't know if I'm doing the best job explaining it. And then you have your GMO seed, which is not pollinated by hand or by accident or by the wind. GMO seeds are created in a lab, and they splice different DNA from even from animals. They take fish DNA and put it into tomato DNA. There's a lot of different things they're doing out there, but you mainly only see that in soybeans and corn seed and wheat and alfalfa and a lot of the cash crops that farmers are doing. You see a lot of GMO seed. You hardly ever see it through garden seed companies like mine, through the big ones like Burpee or Park Seeds or High Mowing Seeds. There's a lot of discussion out there that says, like Monsanto, for instance, they keep on buying up a lot of these smaller seed companies or mid-sized seed companies that do a lot of cool hybrid work and not necessarily GMO work. So you might be carrying their seed one day, and they might not have an affiliation with Monsanto, and then all of a sudden Monsanto buys them up, and then a lot of people don't hear about it, or you don't even know they bought them. And then a year later, you might be accused of working with Monsanto when you really don't even know. I mean, you have no affiliation with them. You're not using GMO seed through Monsanto or anything. It's just because they're buying up all these hybrid seed companies out there. So there's a fine line that you just kind of got to watch. You got to see what your customer base really wants. We don't knowingly carry I know for a fact we don't carry any GMO seed, and we'll never knowingly carry any GMO seed. And I just don't really see, maybe in the future with maybe a tomato or something, you'll see some garden seed companies start carrying some GMO seed, but there's just really none out there right now that I know about, or at least, to my best knowledge, I don't know of any of that kind of stuff out there. So a lot of people are kind of scared about it, but it's not really out there right now.
It's a conversation, isn't it? It's education. The more they know, the more confident they are. Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you, though, you're an owner, you're an entrepreneur, you've got the business growing. Do you get to garden yourself personally? Yes.
So the first few years, it kind of slowed down. I got to garden the first few years since the business was just kind of part-time on the side and growing my own seed. And then for just this last springtime, I was able to garden a lot, because what I found out the 2 years before that was I was spending all my springtime at the office, and when I went home, I was kind of neglecting my garden, and it wasn't really working out that well. So I was like, something's got to change. The reason I got into this was to garden. So right now we're on about an 1.5 acre plot that's actually at our storefront and our warehouse. So when I need a break, or we have a couple workers out there all the time, we have a greenhouse out there. So it's all, as long as it's in the area of where my store is that's basically what I came to find out was that my garden or our farm needs to be right next to our warehouse and our store. That way I get to get out there a lot more. Because when you come home at 5 or 6 o'clock, especially in the springtime when I get in at 6 a.m. and I leave at 6 p.m. and I have a family, it's kind of like something needed to give. So I no longer have a garden at my house, but I have a farm at my store.
Nice.
And that works out way better.
No, we have listeners actually in 60 countries. And one of the things they always ask about is flavor. And I know this is controversial. Like, what do you think is your best tasting tomato, for example?
I would have to say sun sugar. I love candy, and I just love sugary type tomatoes. And sun sugar is actually a hybrid. It's an F1 hybrid. I cannot recall the two varieties that they bred together to make sun sugar, but it's a golden yellow cherry tomato that I go out every morning. It produces tomatoes first, so it's a really early maturing tomato, and it produces all season long until the first frost, as long as you pick them. And it has the best flavor, the most sugar type tomato that I've ever tasted. And so I've been gardening now for about seven years since I was out of college. So I've grown about 80 different varieties of tomatoes so far, and I like to look up online, see what everybody's favorites are, and been growing those. So I've tasted a lot of tomatoes, but the sun sugar hybrid is my favorite tomato out there right now.
So, dear listener, head over to ufseeds.com, poke around, use the search engine on the store to find the sun sugar. I wanted to ask you, as an entrepreneur, Noah, what were your friends and family like when you said, I'm starting a seed business? Were they supportive? Did they think you were crazy? And why didn't you listen to them?
Oh, man, yeah. So I had two roommates when I first started my seed company, and it was slow growth at first, so I kept it in my bedroom. And it was actually in my bedroom for the first 3 years that I started the company. And it grew slowly, but it grew it grew kind of fast too. So I'd come home from work and working 8 or 9 hour days, and I'd come home and work another 2 or 3 hours in the bedroom, just filling orders, work until 9 o'clock, and going to bed, and selling $2 seed packets. And it started that kind of slow at first. A lot of people didn't think that, it would take forever, which it did take a while. It's 6 years now. We're finally getting to the point that, we're rolling pretty good now, but it definitely is one of those things that's kind of exponential growth, and it just takes a few years to get where you want to, selling $2 seed packets. But, so yeah, working out of the house for the first 3 years, working in my bedroom, and then getting to that point where it was really scary when I actually went from doing this part-time to full-time, going on about 3.5, 4 years ago. I called my wife, who was out of town at the time, and I told her I was getting frustrated with my other job too, and I just told her I couldn't do it anymore. And it was scary, but I thought I could definitely go out and just do this full time now. And I just took that jump, and I started doing it full time about 3.5 years ago, and just haven't looked back. And now that I can put 60, 70 hours a week into the company, and I have a few part-time and a couple full-time employees now, it's just it's working out really well now. But it was definitely scary, and it was tough trying to get the support of my family and friends. Because at first it didn't make sense, but it's one of those things you just got to work really hard and keep your head down and keep on just going. And finally, we got to a point that I could just jump in head first with it, and it's worked out really well.
You're inspiring. I wanted you to tell that story. We have a lot of listeners who are going to school for horticulture, a lot of garden designers starting their first design companies. And there's a lot of fear and trepidation, but there's nothing like being your own boss, right?
Oh, there really isn't. I'm able to. I have a 3-month-old, my first kid, and there's nothing better than being able to say, "Hey, it's noontime. I'm gonna go home and be with my kid for an hour, eat some lunch, be with my wife, and then go back to work." And making your own hours, and just it's hard for some people to wake up in the morning or to get motivated to go do that. But if you're really willing to do it and willing to work hard, and you just got to stay motivated, and it's definitely frustrating sometimes. Sometimes early on you'd look at your bank account and you'd be like, oh man, there's not much in there. And what am I going to do? And sometimes it's nervous. There's a lot to being an entrepreneur, but the most satisfying part is at the end of the day when you just you make your own hours and you do what you want to do, and you just prioritize, and you just got to learn that. And if you just work hard at it, as long as you have a dream or you have a goal, and if you can reach that goal, you'll be successful.
Noah, the listeners love to know from experts like yourself what's trendy or what's about to become popular. I know the year is just starting. Do you have a feeling for what's going to be the hot vegetable or the hot plant for 2015?
I have to say kale. I would say in 2014 it was probably the hottest, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon. Previously I would just purchase 5, 10, 20 pounds of kale at a time of different varieties, and sell out of it like in March, April time, and I'd go to purchase more. And what I found out last year was there's no kale seed left. Kale has it's a superfood now, and there's a lot of nutrients in it. And there's a decent amount of varieties of kale, but nothing close to what you see in tomatoes or peppers. So there's only a small amount of farmers out there that are actually growing kale to get seed from it. And it's not the easiest crop to get seed from, and it's a lot of work for not much seed. So I mean, it's hard. It'd be hard for us to grow kale seed in the amount that we sell it, for it to make sense so far, or at least right now. So we purchased a lot of ours from farmers throughout the United States. So we have Red Russian, and occasionally you'll get a crop failure too, which happened last year with Lacinato or dinosaur kale. So kale was super hot last year, and I think it's going to be super hot this year. And a lot of we're starting to get a lot more of the small farmers and market growers that purchase 1-2 pounds at a time. So this year, I pretty much purchased all of our kale already for the entire season. So I purchased like 150 pounds of dwarf blue curled Scotch kale, 100 pounds of Red Russian kale, and then you got your Lacinato dinosaur kale, which was a failed crop this year from the main grower that we buy from. So I was only able to get my hands on 5 pounds of that. So, I mean, we're going to sell that pretty fast. So, but kale is definitely a superfood that people are learning how to cook with, and eat it in different ways and shakes. And it's definitely, I think, going to be the hottest vegetable, again, in 2015.
Man, you could Google all day and not get what you just shared right there. That's awesome. I just looked at the clock. Our time is whipping by. And now's the time in the show where we play a game called 5 Quick Questions. This is your chance to share your wisdom and experience with novice beginner gardeners. Are you ready to play?
Yep, let's go.
Question number 1. What is the funniest or most unusual or craziest mistake that you've ever made in the garden that you're willing to admit to in public?
Oh, man. Probably taking a bite out of a tomato and then looking at it and there being a worm in it. So probably ate a worm or two.
That's how you know it's organic.
But that's part of the nutrients of the tomato. So I mean, a lot of I don't know how quick these answers are supposed to be, but I think it's just more nutrients in the tomato if you eat a worm or two.
That's right, protein. Question 2. If you were only allowed to grow 2 plants next season, let's call them heirloom plants. What are the 2 plants that you would have to grow for personal reasons?
Like tomato or pepper, or you want more specific?
If you were on a desert island or the law was passed that Noah could only grow 2 plants, what were those 2 plants?
I would definitely grow corn. Just because you can make a lot of different things out of corn and dry it out. And then I would say probably corn. I'm being more nutrient and thinking like long term. So I would say maybe wheat.
Okay.
I know that's weird, but I think those 2 would last you the longest if you're on a desert island.
I think mine would have to be those crazy hot peppers. Like, it's a slippery slope. I've become obsessed. You could weaponize them.
I think you would starve pretty fast if you ate the Carolina Reapers. Those are like 1.5 million Scovilles. You need milk too, I guess.
Trying to explain it to a non-pepperhead, like it's 1,000 times or 2,000 times hotter than a jalapeno.
Yeah, just take a habanero, which a habanero, I believe, I want to say a habanero is 50,000 Scovilles. It might be 500,000 Scovilles, But one of those two, just take a habanero. I'm pretty sure a habanero is 50,000 Scovilles, or maybe 250. I don't know. But just take a habanero and multiply that by 10, and that's what a Carolina Reaper would taste like in your mouth.
For you mad scientists out there in high school who want to go to college, there's going to be all kinds of opportunities in this fringe kind of pushing the envelope for food. And none of this stuff existed a decade ago. The habanero was, oh my God, don't eat a habanero, you'll die. It's 50,000 Scoville.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, if there's seed people out there that want to start growing and maybe making money off of seeds, definitely start with hot peppers. Just the markup on hot peppers, like right now, I believe I'm paying about like $150 for 1,000 Carolina Reapers, and that's wholesale. So, I mean, but you don't get, I mean, Carolina Reapers, they don't have a huge yield of seeds, but I mean, just hot peppers, if you're wanting to get your foot through the door and start working with seeds, hot peppers is definitely the way to go.
If you have any interest in the world of seeds, reach out to Noah through his site at ufseeds.com. Just an awesome website. Everything, it's just loaded with content. Speaking of websites, do you have one or two favorite gardening websites or resources or maybe gardening blogs that you can recommend to the listeners?
I would say, I believe I use, to tell you the truth, I just use a lot of my own website now since I've been working on it for 6 years. But if I had to go outside of mine, I believe there's gardenweb.com is a good website, and then Seed Exchange, which they sell seeds, so they're kind of competition, but they do a really good job of explaining different seeds, and they have a lot of community involvement and community web forums. So sometimes I go to those couple websites if I'm looking something up about a different variety of a seed or something.
There's a big association for garden writers. Does the seed world have any kind of an association or a trade group?
There is. It's I believe it's called Garden Writers Association, Garden Writers Association. And it's a lot of bloggers out there that just love gardening, have home gardens, or just anything involved in gardening. And I believe they have at least 50 or so blog websites in their association. So you can go to them. You can find a writer that kind of fits what you're looking for, have them help you out with an article, or you can just kind of work with those people through the association.
Do you hang out with other seed growers, or are you all kind of different competitive entrepreneurs?
No, slowly. So what we're trying to do this year, since we're hoping to move to about a 5-acre field, we still will have cross-pollination. So we're trying to find about 5 to 10 growers in Indiana this year that will want to start growing with us and find varieties that will work best so that we don't get cross-pollination. But yeah, I have a few people that I talk to on a regular basis, and the customers that come to my store, once they come into the store once, they come in, they're definitely repeat customers. So we have a lot of small gardeners and small farmers around Indianapolis area that come in quite a bit and talk to, and it's almost February. So our busy season is February to May. So we'll be running around here, having a lot of people in the store and a lot of orders online, and just trying to get everything caught up. It's definitely the 3 craziest months out of the year coming up.
Nice. Question 4. Do you have a favorite gardening book?
I do not. I am of the younger generation, and when I have questions or I want to read PDFs on things, I'm lucky because I have Purdue University, which they're famous for their agriculture. So whenever I have any questions or anything, I literally type the question in and type Purdue at the end of it on Google, and I usually get a PDF. So I have about 500 PDFs printed off here of just things, just cross-pollination. They have so many articles on climate and just all these different things for our growing area. So my favorite resource is definitely Purdue University, but I don't really have too many books about that I read all the way through to learn new things. I literally, whenever I want to learn, I kind of just go online and Google it.
Cool. I'll put a link to Purdue That's tax dollars at work, all those university extensions. Plus, they know what's going to grow in Indiana.
It really is.
Yeah.
Oh man, they do an awesome job, and they have conferences, and hops is a new thing that people are starting to grow in Indiana, and they do a lot to help farmers out around here, and we're really lucky to have Purdue.
Finally, question 5.
That's an IU guy saying that too.
Are you basketball? Are you crazy? Like, isn't it?
Yeah, they play tonight. IU Purdue play tonight in basketball.
There you go. Up here, it's all hockey, of course, being in Canada.
Oh yeah, yep.
Finally, question 5. No right or wrong answer. Just have fun with this one. Is there anything you've never grown that you're just dying or itching to try to experiment with?
Yeah. Well, I've grown growing hot peppers. This year I expanded our hot pepper selection by about 20 or 30 varieties, and the amount of money that I paid for those, just for gardener to buy them from my gardeners and farmers out there, is a lot. So I'm really itching to grow a lot of my own heirloom and open-pollinated hot peppers this year. In general, they only need to be about 80 feet apart. So if you have a few acres, you can grow a lot of different varieties of hot peppers. And I'm just super excited to. I haven't grown the Carolina Reaper, but definitely excited to grow it this year and hopefully harvest a lot of seeds from that, so that way I can sell that to my customers next year. But just hot peppers, I'm really excited to grow hot peppers, and I've definitely made the mistake a few times around here. When we harvest the hot peppers, now we obviously wear plastic gloves, but when I first started harvesting, even the jalapenos, which I didn't think were very hot, but you can wash your hands 10 times and go to itch your eye, and underneath your fingernail is just one little particle of that pepper, and it just burns.
I understand.
So you got to be careful when you harvest those, but definitely I'm really excited to start working on the hot peppers this year.
Man, I'm so glad you've been on this show. Now I have a source. I make this sauce called Zeus, and it's made from 22 hot peppers. And I have to wear goggles when we're cooking this stuff.
Oh, yeah.
The cat hides in the basement. It's so toxic. It's just a little tiny little bit will really zing up your meals or burn off your tongue.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, we have to wear a gas mask to do the habaneros. It's just, if you breathe that in, you'll start coughing, and it's rough, and especially with, the habaneros aren't even that hot compared to some of the ones we have now. So yeah, they can get pretty hot.
Noel, when somebody goes to your site at ufseeds.com, help our listeners. It's a lot going on. Is there a place they should go first? Is there any kind of specials or seasonal stuff?
Well, really just type in that URL, go to the home page, and then in the upper part of the website, you'll see different sections of our website. So there's the vegetable section, herb section, fruits, farm seed, which is more of the cover crops, which are good for fertilizing in the fall time for your next spring. We have a section for organic seeds, just garden supplies. And then once you kind of figure out what section you want to go to, then once you go to vegetables, then you'll see there's all different types of vegetables that we offer. So you kind of slowly work your way around the website. But it's pretty easy. We've kind of worked on making it easier for people to find what they want. There's a search bar if you're looking for something specific, but it's pretty easy getting around the website.
Nice. Noah, you've been an awesome guest. We're nearly out of time. I want to give you the last word to the listeners today. Can you leave them with a message, maybe a pearl of wisdom or a note of encouragement?
Yeah, just get out there, and gardening is not only, gardening is probably one of the most rewarding hobbies you can have. Not only getting excited in the early springtime and starting stuff from seed indoors and then putting it outdoors and then watering it, watching it grow, and then harvesting your first tomato and just harvesting all your vegetables and eating them. It's not only healthy for you, but then you get outside and get to do all that exercise and be outside instead of watching TV. So, gardening is just a good hobby to get into. And if you're listening to this, you've probably been gardening for a while. So just getting out there and just working out in the garden. And even when you get older and retire, my dream is to get old and retire one day and just have a huge garden and just work out there and just keep myself busy and just enjoy the fruits of my labor.
Outstanding. Noah, you've been an amazing guest. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.